Hurts to continue his playoff excellence?
Nothing else need be said. It's just how I roll. Yes, I do. He's obviously facing a defense that's injury-riddled and struggling. So everybody except Sam Darnold has cooked against them recently. So I think he'll play well. But beyond that, he's proven he steps up in the biggest moments. I mean, even when you look back what happened to him in college when he got benched for Tua, that's tough to come back from mentally. Mm-hmm. And he did it, with flying colors, and obviously now in the playoffs. So if you look at this graph, his last 3 years in the playoffs, this is his record. That's the second best, I assume, to Mahomes. Passer rating. Look at the touchdowns to turnovers. That, I believe, is 5 games or 6. He's won 6 of his last 8 playoff games.
8 games.
I think, but over the last 3 years, that's 8 games. So he's got 19 touchdowns total, 9 passing, 10 rushing, but only 2 turnovers. So I just think with the combination of, I'm not saying he can't have a bad game, but I don't see him having a bad game. 6 of his 8 last playoff games, he's been over 100 passer rating. I see at worst him just kind of being solid, but I think he'll play well. And again, that combination with going against a struggling defense, I think he's going to look good.
Yeah, to your point, Brew, when you look at the numbers are pretty daunting. They're 25th in pass defense. Yeah. They're 24th in takeaways with 16. They're 31st in interceptions, so that shouldn't be a problem. They're last in sacks. They've only had 20 sacks. Prior to the Seattle game, the 3 games prior, they'd given up 30 points, an average of 30 points. So all that lends itself to it. Every single linebacker that was on the original 53-man roster is hurt. So they're either on IR or they're not practicing right now. So there's not a single linebacker who's on the original 53-man roster. Now, all that being said, the last time he faced Salah's defense, and it's only been one time, was with the Jets. They lost 20-14. He did have 300-plus yards. He had 327 yards. He had 2 TDs, but he had 3 interceptions.
Yeah, that was a bet.
And his quarterback rating. So there is that component to it, where when they have, from a scheme perspective, now granted, it's different team, different place, but that part does come into play to some degree. I would be shocked if he didn't have a really good game against the 49ers, but
this would be a horrible loss for Philadelphia.
This would be a nightmare loss.
Which sounds disrespectful to the Niners, but it's not meant to be.
No.
Right.
It's the Niners.
They've had a great year.
I think there is a very legitimate case for Kyle Shanahan to be Coach of the Year. You guys know how strongly I feel about the season McCaffrey had. Yep. And I think Salah was, making chicken salad, if you will, for a good portion of the year, given the injuries. And not trying to disrespect the players, but just given how many injuries they had. But eventually it caught up to him. So I understand, and Philly's at home. They're rested. They're getting guys back that are important. So I agree with you guys that it would be a bad loss. It's also a loss I could see happening, because it's not. I want to make this clear to answer this question. I think it is close to off the board that Jalen Hurts has a dog of a game, cost them. Let me rephrase it: cost them the game. Right. Makes a bunch of mistakes, turns the ball over. That's not who he's been in the postseason. But he also has really, outside of that, the Super Bowl they lost against the Chiefs, really their playoff losses, and I think one of the losses to Tampa.
That was his first playoff game.
They lost 2. They have 2 games against Tampa. Right. He doesn't throw for a lot of yards. No. He's not.
He doesn't even throw a ton.
He doesn't throw a ton. So last year, the Eagles in the conference championship game in the Super Bowl scored 95 points, and the offense and defense scored, offense scored. It was unbelievable, their overall offense. And even in those games, he didn't throw for 250 in either one. The first 2 rounds of the playoffs last year, he threw for a combined 260. The offense was what it had been all year. Saquon dominated. Jalen, Jalen made some key moments, or in the first round against Green Bay, had like a 40-yard run for a touchdown.
Yep. Then it was snowing.
Right. The snow game was the Rams, and that's when Saquon's pounding himself on the helmet of the 80-yard run. But he was not The Eagles' offense for the first 2 rounds of the playoffs last year was what the Eagles' offense was during the regular season last year. Jalen took care of the ball. Saquon was explosive. The Eagles' offense, if it in the beginning of the playoffs this year is what it's been throughout this regular season, that's simply bad.
All right, let's get straight to the point. The sole rationale for even entertaining the notion that Jalen Hurts might deliver a subpar performance is rooted in a fundamental and pervasive lack of confidence in Kevin Patullo's capacity to architect an effective, dynamic game plan and execute superior play calling within a postseason environment. Consider the broader discourse surrounding quarterbacks at this time of year. The analytical conversation is saturated with queries like, how will he handle his inaugural playoff start? Or, do you believe this passer will succumb to the pressure and unravel? We dissect these hypotheticals relentlessly. Yet, a parallel and equally critical line of inquiry is often neglected. What about the offensive play caller? What about the individual whose primary responsibility manifests in the crucible of the third quarter, with 6 minutes remaining when you trail by 3 points or lead by 14? It is his duty to select the appropriate play on a critical 3rd and 8 from the Eagles' own 35-yard line. What schematic concept will he dial up in that pivotal moment? I have absolutely no idea. Neither do you. That profound uncertainty is deeply disquieting. How will he navigate that high-leverage situation? Again, no clue. And that is a legitimate source of apprehension. Consequently, this glaring variable is precisely why the prospect of a Hurts downturn is even a topic of discussion. For the sake of absolute clarity, let's examine the historical record. Jalen Hurts performed superbly against the Green Bay Packers in last year's playoffs. He was excellent against the Los Angeles Rams. He delivered an excellent performance against the Washington Commanders. He was excellent against the Kansas City Chiefs. I will not deconstruct each game's statistics here. I have already conducted exhaustive analyses, reviewed every highlight, and produced multiple in-depth explorations of that entire playoff journey. The objective fact is that Jalen Hurts was outstanding in literally every single postseason contest last year. Let that be explicitly and emphatically understood. Therefore, there exists no rational, performance-based foundation to harbor doubts about Jalen Hurts in this specific moment. However, a necessary concession must be made. No athlete is infallible. Tom Brady has endured poor playoff outings. Patrick Mahomes has as well. Peyton Manning, too. The reality is that a player is not destined to be flawless or perfect in every high-stakes game. You will not always be capable of elevating to your absolute zenith during the playoffs. That is simply the inherent unpredictability of competition. If perpetual perfection were attainable, Tom Brady would possess 15 championship rings. LeBron James would have 15 titles. The accomplishments of all-time legends would be doubled. This is not to suggest that past losses were solely due to inadequacy. It is an acknowledgement that an individual cannot always operate at maximum capacity. I can assure you there are playoff games where Tom Brady could have performed better, where Mahomes could have been sharper, where Manning could have been more precise. This is an immutable truth. Consequently, you can never predict precisely when a suboptimal performance might occur. This inherent variability is precisely why a quarterback necessitates a supportive infrastructure, a team capable of rising to the occasion and elevating its collective play. That support system is indispensable. The pressing question for Philadelphia is, can this specific team provide that uplift? We consistently discuss the San Francisco 49ers' pronounced defensive struggles and their myriad issues. It will be fascinating to observe what that degradation means for the Eagles' offensive approach. Will they interpret it as, excellent, we can now simply execute our original intended scheme and it will finally function as designed? Or will they persist with the strategic identity and tendencies exhibited over the concluding 3 or 4 weeks of the regular season? The nature of the actual game plan deployed will be profoundly revealing. I will state this unequivocally. If the Philadelphia Eagles lose this playoff game, it would represent the most catastrophic possible defeat for any team in the postseason field. This assessment is predicated on the Eagles' established identity, what the franchise symbolizes, and the unequivocal fact that they are the reigning Super Bowl champions. This is not analogous to a potential Chargers upset over the Patriots or a Packers victory against the Bears. The closest parallel might be a Panthers upset over the Rams, but that could occur in a monsoon, with Carolina at home. The Rams, however, are not the Eagles. Do not misunderstand. A Panthers loss would also be significant for Los Angeles. But for Philadelphia, a loss would precipitate a crisis. To illustrate, reflect on the intense outrage from the Eagles fan base following a late-season loss to the Washington Commanders led by Tanner McKee. The reaction was, "This is utterly unacceptable." Now magnify that reaction exponentially for a first-round playoff loss to these 49ers, considering San Francisco's well-documented struggles to merely remain competitive. This is not intended as disrespect toward the 49ers. This analysis is squarely focused on the Philadelphia Eagles standard. I recently published a video defending both Brock Purdy and Jalen Hurts, while praising Kyle Shanahan. However, the expectations for the Eagles, given their stated aspirations, are unambiguous. This is a game they are objectively supposed to win. When a team fails to secure victories in games they are favored to win, a serious, systemic problem is indicated. Conversely, the 49ers are not necessarily supposed to win this contest. They are on the road, battered by injuries. Shanahan himself suggested at season's outset that this was a transitional year. Their roster has been decimated. No rational 49ers supporter could direct legitimate organizational fury toward the franchise for a loss. They could be disappointed, naturally, but they cannot be righteously angry at the front office or coaching staff in a fundamental way. For the Eagles, a loss opens the door for precisely that type of organizational fury. It is the most corrosive form of fan anger because it demands accountability for perceived institutional failure. In a climate where coaches are being dismissed rapidly, consider Mike McDaniel, who survived the initial wave only to be fired later, the scrutiny is intense. Two teams that demonstrably struggled from an offensive coordination standpoint this season, hiring new coordinators whose qualifications were widely questioned, were the Detroit Lions and the Philadelphia Eagles. These were the two franchises about which I voiced serious schematic concerns. The Lions' offensive coordinator has already been dismissed, with Dan Campbell assuming play-calling duties, a highly significant development. For the Eagles, Nick Sirianni has become markedly more involved in the offensive operation, a clear indication of intervention. When a superior must actively insert themselves, effectively taking over portions of an employee's core responsibilities, it is an unambiguous signal that things are not trending positively. This is the unstable reality Philadelphia carries into the playoffs. It is alarming. It is in profoundly uncomfortable position. In a direct schematic comparison, offense versus offense, or even offensive coaching versus defensive coaching, the matchup of Shanahan against Patullo is not remotely close. Similarly, comparing Patullo to the 49ers defensive coordinator, Robert Saleh, also reveals a stark disparity. The compelling chess match will occur between Vic Fangio and Kyle Shanahan. That is a marquee coaching duel between two brilliant, respected tacticians. Yet, if we are discussing an overall schematic advantage, the 49ers indisputably possess it. Even if one argues Fangio holds an edge over Shanahan, that margin is nowhere near as substantial as Shanahan's overwhelming advantage over Kevin Patullo. That is an incontrovertible fact. Naturally, a coaching advantage does not guarantee victory, just as a disadvantage does not ordain defeat. Roster talent, health, and execution remain paramount. However, entering any game, let alone a playoff contest, with a pronounced question mark hovering over the coaching staff is an inherently precarious and confidence-eroding situation. You cannot cultivate the same level of assuredness you would prefer. Therefore, while the outcome remains to be seen, the underlying dynamic is unequivocally problematic. I will be candid. In many respects, elements of the media likely harbor a desire for an Eagles loss. Not due to traditional animosity or partisan dislike, but because it would be a ratings bonanza, pure box office. It would furnish a foundational narrative to fuel discussion from January through the entire offseason. The storyline, reigning champions stunned in first round by flawed 49ers, would be endlessly generative. The cyclical debates would be self-perpetuating. Jalen Hurts couldn't outduel Brock Purdy, Kevin Patullo failed, Sirianni's management, is A.J. Brown departing? The controversy and chaos would be omnipresent. A loss at any stage would be dissected, but a first-round exit is uniquely indefensible. One can rationalize a defeat in the NFC Championship or Super Bowl. A loss to the 49ers in this specific context, however, would trigger an avalanche of urgent, uncomfortable questions. Even a victory here, followed by a second-round loss to, say, the Bears or Rams, would invite severe criticism. A loss to the Bears would prompt, "How did you fall to a first-year head coach and a second-year quarterback?" A loss to the Rams would elicit, "Yes, they are formidable, but you were supposed to be superior." The underlying refrain is constant. You were supposed to be better. You were supposed to have the solutions. You were supposed to win. Whenever a team fails to win a game, they are supposed to win. Demanding and uncomfortable accountability follows. The only viable path to silence the doubt and circumvent this turmoil is singular: continue winning. As long as Jalen Hurts and the Philadelphia Eagles secure 4 consecutive victories from this point forward, a 4-game winning streak culminating in another championship, all critiques are rendered moot. Everything is resolved. It becomes a non-issue. The path is simple, albeit extraordinarily difficult. Just win. Those are my comprehensive reflections. I am eager to absorb your perspectives. What is your assessment of the Philadelphia Eagles? Do you anticipate Jalen Hurts extending his history of playoff excellence? How do you believe the team will perform collectively? What would a loss in this game signify for the franchise's trajectory? Please share your thoughts in the commentary section below. I engage with every single contribution. Whether your viewpoint aligns with or contradicts my own, let us delve into detailed discourse. Let us engage in passionate debate. But ultimately, let us derive enjoyment from the intellectual exchange. Please consider subscribing. We are actively constructing a remarkable digital community and would be thrilled to have you participate. My objective is to forge a space where we experience a genuine sense of connection and shared enthusiasm for the sport. I believe we are making significant progress toward that goal. Additionally, please remember to apply a positive rating to this video, as this action substantively assists with content visibility within the platform's algorithmic systems. Thank you very much for your time and engagement.